Welcome to the Servants of Fire podcast, where we dive into real-life application of the prophetic, evangelism, pastoring, healing, and so much more. We'll have special guests and your host, Alvin Kaufman.
Thanks for joining us on the Servants of Fire podcast. I did this interview with Louise Lopez. This is one of my favorite episodes that I did. We really go through seeing in the spirit, seeing angels, what working with angels looks like, activations on how to see in the spirit, and Louise just really goes through her whole story. This is part one. You can catch part two in about a week. I'm going to have it edited and up, and just hit that subscribe button so you guys know when it's up, and give us a rating if you like too. So without further ado, let's get into this interview. Go into your story about a seer or seeing things in the spirit.
So my name is Louise Lopez. I live in Redding, California. I'm originally from Wales in the UK. Even though I don't sound like it, I sound extremely Americanized now. But I promise you, I am Welsh. I was born in Wales. Lived there for the first 19 years of my life, and then have moved out to Redding, California to do BSSM, Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. Planning on just being here for 9 months. Like, I had no desire to stay out here for any longer than 9 months. And now it's like, that was 2008 and now it's 2018 and I'm still here. So obviously God had a completely different plan for my life, but I love it. I love being here. And so I was raised seeing and having encounters, and my parents, when I first started telling them as a kid that I was seeing things, my mom's kind of perspective on it. She's like, well, there's angels in the Bible and people saw them and they encountered them. So sure, why not, kind of a thing. And that was kind of the attitude that she came at it with. So I just kind of saw angels, had encounters with them. Like, I don't ever remember not seeing them. Like, they've just always kind of been there. I do actually remember, the first time meeting one of my angels, whose name is Jason. I remember meeting him the first time when I was like 5. And I have like written out what it was like the first time I met him and stuff like that I wrote, in my early teens about that encounter. So just kind of grew up in this, really.
And how have other people reacted when you've told them that, like, you see angels all the time, that you interact with them? What kind of feedback have you gotten with that?
Growing up, it actually was very positive. I come from an amazing church in Wales, and so my dad was the senior pastor, and so the church was actually always super encouraging. Like, I don't ever remember my church or youth group or anything like that telling me that it was weird. I think in that sense, my parents, they kept me protected in that sense. Like, and obviously there were times where I remember going home and I'm like, oh, I told people I saw angels and they told me they weren't real or we shouldn't see them. And, my parents just reminded me who I was. And, I think their encouragement was huge, because I never felt like it wasn't actually till my early teens when I realized that not everybody saw like I did. Like, up to that point, I seriously thought everybody sees, like, this is just a part of life. Like, everybody sees angels. And it wasn't until I was like a teenager where people are like, I don't see that stuff, and I'm like, wait, what? You don't? Because it was just normal. Like, I didn't know any different. And, I do remember being in my teens, like, obviously, telling people that I saw and had encounters, and they would just, some people would get like freaked out about it or whatever and be like, oh, I don't really know. But, I would always go back to my parents and they would always be like, no, that's not true. This is who you are. Like, yes, you can see, so I always would come back to them, and they would always just constantly remind me who I was, and, that it was awesome that I saw, and, just start telling me about encounters. So they definitely did a great job of protecting that. So.
Right on. So how has it been in like a ministry sense now? Like, you went to BSSM, but and now you're doing like itinerant ministry as well too. How do angels, I guess, help us in whether it be healing, whether it be other forms of ministry that you've seen? Like, how does that affect you in ministry? Does it make it easier, or do you see what angels are doing, or can you kind of go into that aspect of just ministry?
Yeah. Oh, it definitely makes it easier. So much easier. It's so nice having the angelic to partner with in meetings. You know, for example, like in healing meetings, I'll see angels actually come in carrying body parts, which sounds super weird, but like I'll be looking around the room. Like I remember one instance that just come into my head. I remember being in one church service and I wasn't even speaking at the conference. I was just kind of attending the conference and suddenly I hear over the microphone, Louise, if you're in the room, can you come and tell us if you're seeing anything? And I'm like, and I was like on the floor, I remember, so I went on the microphone and I saw this angel come in carrying hair. And I'm like, and I just said prayer, I'm like, God's restoring hair. Like, if you need that, you know, you can receive it. And at the time, people thought it was really strange, but later on, this girl actually got completely healed. She'd had this stress disorder. Basically, her hair was falling out, and the doctors had told her it wouldn't start growing back. And then from that moment, her hair actually started growing back. And so, like in ministry, like partnering with them like that. So, you know, especially with healing, it's extremely useful and makes, you know, because I'll just when times of healing comes, I'll just look around the room and, you know, and sometimes too, that's how I know if healing starts to break out. You know, if I'm in a meeting and I look around, I'm like, wow, there's a ton of healing angels in the room right now. I know in ministry, okay, I'm really going to go after this right now because a tons of angels just came in. And so it kind of helps you partner with what the angelic is doing, partner with what heaven is doing. And then I'll, you know, see different angels for different things. Like, you know, sometimes I'm like, wow, there are tons of encouragement angels in the room. Okay, God really wants to bring encouragement to this meeting. And so I found that it really helps me to kind of like discern the atmosphere, discern what's going on by using the angelic and being able to look to them and what, you know, because obviously God has sent them to the meeting for certain things. And then so it's asking God, okay, what's going on? What are the angelic doing? What have you sent to this room? You know, so ministry wise, I think it's, for me especially, it's been very, very helpful.
That's amazing. Can you like maybe touch on like being that you're married and I know that your husband as well too is in ministry alongside you. How have you guys kind of learned to work together or what does that look like for each of you?
Yeah, we work really well together. I mean, I have an amazing husband who's very much like, you know, we'll go to meetings where I'm the one there to speak and he's just there to support me and watch me and stuff like that, which I think is great because, you know, for some friends that can be hard, you know, one person, because obviously me and my husband are both in ministry and sometimes they just want him, sometimes they just want me. But we found like he's a prophet too. And so we kind of tell people that I'm the eyes and he's the ears, you know, because of a lot of things, like something will be happening in the room and I'll see it and he'll hear it. And so we're then kind of able to confirm what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and kind of, yeah, like they go really, really well together. And it's been fun to kind of see, or like I'll see a picture over somebody or something. I'm like, I don't quite know what this means, but this is what I'm seeing. And then Gabriel's able to come in. He's like, oh, this is what I heard. And that's the interpretation of that. And so it's been fun. It's been fun in marriage to do ministry together because it's like, oh, okay, you heard what I saw and, you know, and vice versa and stuff like that. So that's been great.
Wow, that's powerful. So yeah, that's kind of like how the body is, you know, like you explained it very well. Like you see and he hears. Can you kind of go through your process of like seeing and like you call yourself I think a seer as well too. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but can you kind of go through like what a seer is?
I mean, I would say a seer prophet. I mean, when you look at like the Old Testament, there was definitely ones that were classified as seers and prophets and stuff like that. Was I think kind of in the New Testament is kind of all under the encompass of prophet. So I would say that I'm the seer prophet. And there's lots of different types of prophets, but I would say that I am a seer prophet, which basically means that when I'm getting prophetic words for people, a lot of times I'll see things. And so for some people, like, you know, for example, my husband, he hears everything. And so when he prophesies over something, and this is kind of like how you can tell the difference is when somebody's kind of giving a prophetic word, it's kind of the language that they use. So like when I'm prophesying over somebody, I'll always say like, I saw this, I see this over your life. Whereas my husband, his language is, I heard the Lord say this over you, and then I heard God said this. And so it's kind of, This is kind of the way that we get the words from the Lord, and then how we kind of interpret that, and then how we see it. So I always see things like I'll see visions of people, or I'll see words over people's heads or something like that. Whereas for my husband, he just hears it all, so it's kind of the different ways that God speaks.
That's amazing. So do you see a lot of the open vision that you're talking about, or is it like the internal, like kind of the imagination, or the imagination eye, I guess?
It's a bit of both. Sometimes I'll go into open visions, and sometimes they're in just my imagination, and sometimes I can't tell. Like sometimes something feels so real. I'm like, I don't know if I just had an open vision, or I don't know if that was in my imagination, but it was so real that I think at that point it doesn't really matter very much. But it definitely comes in both ways, and I think it depends on the season too. Like I've had some seasons where it's been all kind of through the imagination, and I think because in that season God was teaching me to really trust what I was seeing and have to put faith behind it, because it's obviously like if God comes with an audible voice and you're like, okay, this is obviously what the Lord said, whereas if he comes in the still small voice, yeah, it takes more faith to kind of walk that out, because it's not maybe as clear as you think. And so, yeah, but it is definitely a little bit of both. And I think it depends on the season. Right now, I think the season I'm in, it is kind of a little bit of both. It's kind of a mixture. Like I'll have some moments where it's just an open vision, or and it's the same with the angelic too. Like a lot of what I see, is in the spirit. And I've had seasons where everything, especially when I was a kid, I saw everything in the natural. And then kind of different seasons I've gone through where I'll see things in the physical or see things in the spirit. Now I kind of see mostly in the spirit, and in the natural is kind of more of a rare thing. But I know that what I'm seeing in the spirit is so real that it doesn't feel like any less than if I did see it in the physical.
Wow, that's awesome. So I think one of the things that you really feel compelled to is like kind of equip or to help the body see. What are some activations or things that people can do to start? I'll just say this. I think a lot of people do see in the spirit, but they just don't know it. Like you talk about the imagination, kind of the eye thing, and that's the way I see. But I think a lot of people kind of think that it's an outward thing rather than an inward thing. So can you kind of maybe go through a couple things that you do when you come in to train or to teach people to see?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I love, like you said, one of my goals, like I want to equip the body to see, because we all have access to seeing. Like seeing is a spiritual gift, and the Bible says that we have access to all of our spiritual senses, and so we all have access to see. Like everybody, I think, is born being able to see, because it's a spiritual sense. Like we all have access to it, and it's, but it's like you can actually train yourself to see and have encounters. And I totally agree. Like a lot of people are seeing stuff and they don't even realize it. Or a lot of people are seeing stuff and think because it's not in the physical, it doesn't count. Which is not true. Like it completely does count, and even people tell me like, oh, I see in my dreams, but it's not in the physical in front of me, so it doesn't count, which is, I mean, if you think about it that way, it's like, well, I'm glad that Joseph didn't think that in the Bible, because if he thought, oh, I just, Gabriel came to me in a dream and told me to get out with Jesus as a baby, if he just had that in a dream, and if he had thought to himself, oh, that was just a dream, it wasn't a physical encounter in front of me, the repercussions of that would have been insane. So it's definitely recognizing what you're seeing. But an activation that I love to do is, it's kind of a very simple activation, because you can definitely train yourself to see. I remember, because like, for example, like with, go back to the prophetic, you can train yourself in the prophetic, and that just means when you're in meetings asking God, okay, God, what words do you have for people? It's like stepping out and taking some risks. And, when it comes to seeing, like, you can absolutely train yourself to see. And it's just it's the same similar kind of vein as the prophetic. It's just kind of asking God questions. So I'll tell people, okay, if you're in a room, first of all, invite the angelic in. Invite the angelic to come. They're always there and they're always around, but just kind of inviting the angelic to kind of come to the forefront. And then when you've done that, asking the Lord, okay, where is an angel in the room right now? and kind of letting God highlight somewhere to you, and going with your first gut instinct. Like, don't doubt yourself. Just kind of go with what you're seeing. If you're seeing one in that corner or whatever corner, or right in front of you, just kind of go with it. Don't doubt what you're feeling. And then, so he's asking, like, okay, where's an angel in the room? And then kind of once you've done that, asking God again, okay, God, what does that angel look like? And then letting God tell you, maybe you just see the hair color, or maybe you just see the wings, or maybe you see the whole angel, but not discounting what you're seeing. So if only you see one little detail, just going with it and say, okay, God, I see an angel in that corner and it's got blue hair, for example, and then from that point, you can just kind of, ask God what the angel's name is, because a lot of times angels' names have huge significance, and their name, have meaning, and there's so much meaning behind the names. And so, I remember actually I did this activation once before, and this girl, she sees this angel she'd never seen before in her life. She does this activation. She sees this angel, covered in diamonds. And she's like, that's super weird. And she kind of doubted it. She didn't know if she was really seeing that. And then she asked the Lord what the angel's name was. And the angel told her this name that she'd never heard it before. She's like, I don't even know what that name is. I don't know what it means. And I had said in the activation, like, Google what the name means. Like, Google the name, find out what it is. And so she had Googled the name, and the name was actually in the name of a diamond company. And the angel that she had saw was covered in diamonds. So it was like a huge confirmation for her. So, so ask the Lord, okay, what's the angel's name? And then you can then ask the angel, like, hey, what are you here to do? Because, the Bible says the angels are messengers, and, they're here to watch over us and, watch over us and everything. And so you can ask the angel, what are you here to do? And sometimes they might be like, especially if you're in a church service, sometimes they'd be like, yeah, I have a message for the person over there, or I God sent me with healing for that person over there, or, they could just be there to be in the service or be in the meeting. And, so basically just asking questions and kind of doing that. I found, kind of just starts training yourself to do it. Like, I've had people that have they've done that, those simple questions and asking, God, where's the angel? What's their name? What are they doing? What do they look like? Over time, they just keep on doing it. Over time, they've come and told me that, like, now I walk into a room and I don't have to ask the questions anymore, because I've so trained my spirit to, like, look for those things as I walk in the room, that now I just walk in and I'm like, okay, there's an angel over there, and this is what he's doing, and this is the message that he brings. And, taking it back to the prophetic, I remember when I first started really learning to prophesy, the beginning, it's like you'd walk into a room or a church service, and I'm like, okay, God, who do you have a word for? What are you saying over them? Whereas now, if somebody comes up to ask me to prophesy over them, it's like, yeah, it just kind of comes. I don't really have to ask anymore, because it's kind of like I've just trained myself to kind of always be listening out for God's voice and what he's doing. And, you can definitely do the same with seeing. It's just constantly going after it and not giving up, and keep on asking the questions. And, okay, God, where's the angels? What are they doing? And then, listening to what they say. If an angel says to you, hey, I'm here to bring healing to a person over there, they need healing in their body, then being proactive with that and walking up to that person and say, hey, this might sound a little strange, but do you happen to need healing, in your body? And I mean, if you're a church or you're in the place where you are is not, so up with the angelic at that point, I probably wouldn't go over and be like, hey, this angel just came to me and told me this, whatever. But definitely start off with, do you happen to need healing in your body? And then if they say, yeah, like, how come you ask? You can kind of go into detail and tell them, but definitely being proactive about kind of what you're seeing and stuff like that.
That's good. What would you say to somebody that, and I mean, this is kind of the skeptics that I'm thinking about, but I mean, people who would say, okay, you're looking at angels, why aren't you looking at Jesus? Or why aren't you, like, looking at the Holy Spirit or asking the Holy Spirit? And I understand that there's a partnership with all of them, but what do you say to kind of like people that would kind of play that card to you and what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think with obviously, that's a question that I get asked a lot. And I would say for me, and some people, they say, like, I'm worried that if I have relationship with the angelic, then I'm not going to have with God. And for me, it's just brought me closer, because I know when I look at this angel standing in front of me, I'm like, wow, God sent this angel into this room for that person over there because they need healing. Like, it just always reminds me of I just get the allness of God. Like, wow, God, you're so amazing. Like, I can't believe you did this. Like, God, you're so big. You're so great. And so that's what kind of seeing the angelic is. And, angels are there. Like, they're there for us. Like, the Bible says that they're ministering spirits, Hebrews 1:14 says, are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation? So they are there to minister to us, to, when we need it, to strengthen us, and it says in Luke 22:43, it says an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, so the angelic is really there, and they're not there to take away from who God is. They're not there to turn our eyes away from God, but they're there to kind of just show us in moments like who God is. I remember growing up as a little kid, and I would see these angels standing in front of me, and my parents would always tell me, like, heaven is just as real. Like, God is just as real as these angels that you're seeing. And I remember just being like, wow, God, like, you're so good, and you're so big, and you're so real, and you're so majestic. And, and the angelic is there for us. And, and you even look at the Bible, and I've had people tell me before, I don't want angels to minister to me. Like, I just want God, which is great. And I love this sentiment behind it, but it's like, okay, is that out of fear or out of not understanding, because you look at Jesus, he had angels come and minister to him, after he was tempted with the devil. It says in Matthew 4 that angels came and ministered to him, so we do need the angelic, and it's definitely time for the church to recognize them again. And, and I love Romans 8:38 when it comes to this topic, because that verse says, and I'm convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow, not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. And I love there that it includes the angelic, because it, just shows you that nothing can really separate you from God, and it's just another thing to use. It's just another, it's just a partnership with him. And, he really does, he sends angels with messages, he sends angels with healing into the room. And it's just recognizing those, not out of not looking at God, but I think out of your awareness of God increases to such a high degree. If you do that activation that I talked about, and you see this angel, you're like, wow, like, that's heaven right there. Like, heaven is as real as that angel. And I think that's what I found anyway. And I think obviously there's people that can do it in a healthy and bad way, but I think it's just what mindset you have behind it. So for me, it's always been, I know that God is just as real as these angels that I'm seeing, that Jesus is just as real, and that nothing can separate me from God. And there's times where I've had crazy angelic encounters, and I remember being a little kid and I got lost one day, and an angel showed up and took me home. And it's when I was living in Eastern Europe, and I remember getting home and being like, wow, God, like, you love me so much that I was completely lost as a 10-year-old, didn't know where it was, and you sent an angel just for me to take me home because I didn't know how to go. Like, I felt so loved by God in that moment. And that's what the angelic is there for. It's there just to show us how much God truly does care for us in those little moments like that, and to know that we're so loved.
Thanks for joining us. Episode number 8, part 1 with Louise Lopez. Find us on Twitter at Servants of Fire Pod or Servants of Fire Podcast on Facebook.